Welcome back to Hoopla. I'm your host, Ethan Jackson, and today I just want to keep things pretty simple. As most of you know, I'm sure, the trade deadline just wrapped up, and there were some pretty significant moves that were made, so I just want to give my reaction to those moves, and then I kind of want to talk about some of the teams that didn't do anything at the trade deadline, which is obviously the Lakers, Warriors, and I also think the Nuggets kind of made a little bit of a mistake by not trying to shore up their bench some. So this should be a pretty fun episode. I honestly was expecting a pretty dry deadline, but like I said, there were some pretty significant moves that were made that kind of shake up the league a little bit, and I want to discuss them. So without further ado, let's get straight to it. So I'm just going to kind of go about this in the order of which they kind of came in as far as the big ones go. So the first one that came in earlier today was that the 76ers acquired Buddy Hield in exchange for Marcus Morris, Korkmaz, and 3 second-round picks. So first off, I was expecting the 76ers to make some kind of move at the deadline because I did not think that they were just going to ready to give up on the season, just kind of call it quits and hope that this team is able to win some games to avoid the play-in and things like that and hope Embiid gets healthy. But I also think they realized that they weren't good enough to win a championship even if Embiid was healthy enough. They may have thought they had a chance. I thought they had a chance, but I feel like they knew they needed to get better in certain areas. So there were all kind of names that were being thrown out when it came to the Sixers, but I don't remember Buddy Hield being thrown out any really. Maybe earlier in the season, but like the last few weeks I haven't really heard that name, so I don't know if it's something that I just missed, but I don't remember him being at the top of their list. But I have to say, I really do like this move. The Sixers are ranked 16th in three-point attempts per game watch now, which in my opinion is way too low if they want to be serious about winning a championship. It goes without saying that Buddy Hield will move them up on that list pretty quickly because we all know he loves to shoot that thing and is not going to pass up looks. And I think there's kind of crazy stats over the last few years that the only person to make more threes outside of Steph Curry is him. He's made the most threes outside of Steph Curry. But sometimes all it takes is adding one shooter to an offense that just kind of opens things up for the whole entire rest of the team and makes the offense just overall better. So now they have the ability to run lineups where they have 4 guys around Embiid that can catch and shoot, and if somebody closes out hard, they can put it on the floor and go get their own shot. So I think the Sixers made a great decision overall in trading for Buddy Hield. It just gives them some more options and some more versatility and kind of helps solve some of those shooting issues that they've had throughout this season. But they to me, they have now put themselves in a position where they have 4 guys that can go for 20-plus on any given night, with those guys being Embiid, obviously, Maxey, obviously, Tobias Harris, and then now you add Buddy Hield to the mix. That's another one that can go for 20-plus. So they are now closer to being on par with the Celtics in that sense, although the Celtics, you can argue that they have 5, maybe 6 guys that can do it if you want to count Horford as somebody that can go for 20-plus on any night. But to me, they now have the ability to match up with the Celtics by having 5 shoot, dribble, pass guys on the floor. Like that lineup with Porzingis as the Celtics 5, to me, there was going to be some matchup issues there if the Sixers ever played them in the playoffs. But now it seems like they can run a lineup like that. Like I said, that lineup of Maxey, Hield, Harris, Batum, and Embiid can match up pretty well with that. So that's really the first thing that my mind went to was that lineup right there. I think that can be their quote-unquote death lineup that proves to be pretty good on both ends of the floor. It's one of those lineups that puts opposing defenses in a bind because they can choose to send doubles at Embiid all night, but that's going to be leaving someone open that can make shots pretty consistently. So it's just kind of a game that teams would have to play, whether they want to give up wide open shots or whether they want somebody to try to hold their own against Embiid one-on-one. So like I said, I think that gap has really closed between them and Boston, and some may argue there was never a gap. And if that's the case, then this puts them right above Boston, in my opinion. If you're one of those people that believe that there wasn't a gap, I still believe that, me personally, I think there was a bit of a gap between them, and this moves them a lot closer. And now I don't necessarily know who I would pick going into a series. Let's say the Eastern Conference Finals, the semifinals, whatever, or with Embiid's injury, it may end up being a first-round series. I don't necessarily know who I would pick going into that series now with this move. However, with all that being said, the Sixers season will all come down to Embiid's health. I feel kind of like I'm stating the obvious there, and I'm not saying anything that is rocket science, but it's a true statement. All this move did to me was increase their ceiling if Embiid is able to come back healthy, and it will also kind of help them be able to tread water in his absence and win a few more games. That was, my biggest worry as of late is they're falling in the standings pretty fast. Like, they're all the way down like the 5th or 6th seed now. So hopefully, like I said, this trade helps them win a few more games to avoid falling into the play-in, and they can have a playoff spot ready. And then hopefully Embiid gets back in time for them to get some decent amount of time together and play some games before the playoffs, and then we'll see if they can try to make a run at this thing, which I think they can. So great move for the Sixers, in my opinion. I really like that move. The next move that came in today was OKC sent Trey Mann and Davis Bertans, another player, and then some draft compensation to the Hornets, and they got Gordon Hayward in return. This is probably the biggest deal that happened at the deadline, and in one of my previous episodes, I talked about how the Thunder were in I think it was my Power Rankings episode, I talked about how the Thunder are in this unique position where they could be patient and try to build this through the draft and kind of slowly build this thing up and hopefully have a contender 10 years from now, from 2 or 3 years from now all the way, and make a long run at it, or they could use some of their assets and try to go all in to try to win a championship this year. And with this move, I feel like they kind of split the difference on those two options. This is a all-in level move considering the people that were available at this deadline. Gordon Hayward is a former All-Star and is a great player that has just kind of he's been forgotten about in Charlotte, whether that's because of injuries or just because they're always in the lottery and not really doing anything of worth. So he's like many other people that are playing in Charlotte. They just kind of P.J. Washington, that I'll talk about later. He's another one that's just kind of got lost in Charlotte. Even it's even happening to LaMelo. But the great thing about it is they did not have to give up a ton to get him. So they found a way to increase their chances of winning this year while also holding on to most of their assets as regards to their future. Also, Gordon Hayward is a free agent this summer. This is probably my favorite part about the trade, is he's a free agent this summer. So if things don't work out, they can let him walk, and it's not like they had to give up the house to bring him in, and it wouldn't sting so bad. And then on the other hand, if it does work, he's a free agent, like I said, so they can try to re-sign him on a team-friendly deal, and because I doubt he's going to have the biggest market in free agency just because of his injury history and his age. So this move, it's one of those that has a really, really high upside and a low downside, quite frankly. At best, they make a legit run at the championship, maybe even win the thing. At worst, you gain some playoff experience and you let him walk in free agency. It's probably going to be somewhere in between those. We'll just have to see. But I have to give some props to Sam Presti on just how smart, which he's been making smart moves really since going all the way back to the KD time. But this was just a really smart move. It was a smart organization making a smart move, and like I said, I just got to give them their props on this one. But as far as the trade, what does Gordon Hayward bring to this team? To me, he adds another shot creator, another playmaker that they have desperately. Well, I shouldn't say they have desperately needed, because they're the 1 seed in the West, so it's not like they really needed to make a change. But the one of the weaknesses I see with the team is that they, outside of SGA and Jalen Williams, they don't really have a guy that can kind of create for the team or kind of create for himself. So I guess they thought that would have been Josh Giddey, but he's not playing up to the standard they thought he was going to play at. So he can kind of fill this void as somebody that can play the 3, can slide down and play a small lineup 4 if you need him to. And he's just kind of one of them people that seems like he's the type of player that's just a good basketball player that can do all the little things that need to be done on offense and defense. But he brings a veteran presence that he's been around a long time, longer than most people would realize, I think. And honestly, they have no vets on that team. But not only is he just a vet presence, he is a legitimate former All-Star level player. He's not a Udonis Haslem type that's just giving knowledge on the, or Iguodala last year with the Warriors, that's just kind of on the bench as a quote unquote almost like a coach, assistant coach over there. He's also going to be able to contribute on the floor for many minutes, as much minutes as they need him. So that's the good part about it, is it's not just bringing in a vet to just be a voice. He's also going to be a contributing player. But I have to say that this was the most surprising move of the deadline because I did not hear anything about this even being a possibility about it before it actually happened. Maybe it was something I just missed, but I don't remember even seeing Gordon Hayward's name brought up in really any trades, much less going to the Thunder. So this was a cool move, and I was pretty shocked by it, but I really like it. To me, this moves them into the upper echelon of the West. That if you go by record, they already are there in terms of they're tied for the 1 seed. But I did not think that they could legitimately make it out of the West and to the finals. But to me, this trade kind of changed my view of that. I now think that they have the ability to make a legit run at it and that they can beat anyone in this conference. And the best part about it is he's a free agent this summer, so it was a low-risk move that did not take many of their assets to get and allows plenty of flexibility for their future, but it maximizes what they can accomplish this season. And like I said, I really think they got a good shot at it now and wouldn't be shocked if they made a title run. I still, like I said, I'm in between, and as gets closer to the playoffs, I'll do my predictions and things like that. But like I said, it moved them into the upper echelon where they have to be in that conversation. Some people would leave them out, although their record says otherwise. Some people would leave them out just because they're young, but this type of move puts them in that conversation where you have to at least consider them when you're saying who's going to win the West. So, again, another great move by an NBA team. In this situation, it was the OKC Thunder. The next trade that came in was the Knicks sending Quentin Grimes, Malachi Flynn, Evan Fournier, and 2 second-round picks to the Pistons for Bogdanovich and Alec Burks. The Knicks, man, I tell you, they have been putting on an absolute masterclass over the last few seasons on how to patiently build a team and build a culture that can sustain winning for many years to come. They have had plenty of opportunities to try to make a big splash, whether it was Donovan Mitchell or last year I remember there was some rumors about Paul George. This season they could have tried to get Levine or DeJounte Murray, but instead they just kind of opted to stay put and continue to build their culture, like I said. So not only do they have a team that this season could make some real noise in the Eastern Conference, but they also have plenty of assets left to be able to make a big move when the time comes. This added some more flexibility with the money and all the caps and the second aprons, all that kind of stuff. This really helped them out in that sense as their future. But like I said, they have the ability to make some big moves when the time comes. They're already throwing out the LeBron rumors, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of other names that come out. But for the first time in my life since I've been alive, I fully trust the Knicks to make the right move, and I think they will legitimately have a chance to win a championship in the next 5 years. So as far as this move on the floor, like I said, if they were not already, some people on TV and even myself a little bit has been considering that they are legit threats in the East this year with the way they've been playing since the OG trade. The main thing this adds is obviously adds some much needed shooting that if you look up and down their roster, they've been kind of missing. They're making shots, but they don't have any shooters on their team. Both Bogdanovich and Burks are 40% three-point shooters, but I could argue that Bogdanovich is a little bit more than a shooter. He's more of a scorer type person. He's averaging 20 points this year, which is, as I've said before, that's not easy to do in the league, and I don't really care that it was on a bad team that it could be empty stats, whatever, but like it's not easy no matter where you are to average 20 points. So he is bringing shooting and scoring to this team. I'm not sure it really helps so much on the defensive end of the floor, but with the way they are playing on that end, and I'm sure they can find ways to hide people and continue being good defensively, great defensively, just doing it by committee. Because, since the OG trade, they have had the best defense in the league by a pretty wide margin. And I promise you these two players will not negatively affect this too bad, because Coach Tibbs will not allow that to happen. If he notices the defense is falling off tremendously, I'm sure he'll just not play them. And it's not like they gave anything up that was contributing that much to the team. So if they do struggle defensively, it will not be because of a lack of effort, because of the culture they have built over the last few seasons that makes them a tough, gritty, hard-nosed team that's just fun to watch, honestly. And like I said, I love this move for them, and they've just been putting on a clinic on how to build a team and how to build a culture. Most people will write them off this year because when you look at their roster, and I see where people are coming from, when you look at their roster, they do not have the star power that other contenders in their conference in the East and in the West have, but their roster is built and is kind of special in a different way. First of all, I just want to say it's about time that we start giving Jalen Brunson his flowers. It is time to start talking about him in the same conversations as the other best guards in the league, whether it's SGA, whether it's Halliburton, Jamal Murray. He belongs in the conversation with those guys, and he's a rising superstar, and he's not going anywhere anytime soon. He's still young, still getting better by the year, so it's time we start giving him his props and putting him in those conversations. Second of all, not every championship team has to be built in the traditional 2 or 3 stars and some role players that we've seen most teams look like. My first thought when you look at this roster is the championship Pistons team, whether it's the Isaiah Thomas runs or the Chauncey Billups runs. I also think the 2022 Warriors, and I could even argue the 2015 Warriors, are built more kind of in that way. All those teams were led by a superstar point guard, and then you just had a bunch of really good players that fit perfectly into the system and played great basketball when it was time to play great basketball. So this Knicks team reminds me of those type of rosters. Obviously, Brunson is not on the level of Steph and Isaiah yet, and even Chauncey Billups, but these all-time greats, they've got to come from somewhere. A lot of times we get caught up in our own way, like when we start thinking about it, like even saying a statement like that, comparing this team to those teams, people kind of look at me like I'm crazy. But if, let's say he does win a championship this year or sometime in the near future, and becomes, at some point, like I said, they have to come from somewhere. So when you start saying it too early, people look at you crazy. But if he's able to accomplish that, I mean, there was plenty of doubt surrounding Steph, whether he could lead a team, whether Isaiah Thomas could lead a team before they won it. So if he has a chance to etch his name in that category, if he can do the unthinkable and lead this team to a championship. So I'm excited to see how this team finishes the rest of the season. They are already one of the hottest teams in the league right now, and they just added some great pieces that can make them even better and helps their chances really of making some noise in the playoffs. So the next move I wanted to talk about was the Mavericks. They sent Seth Curry, Grant Williams, and a 2027 first-rounder to the Hornets in return for P.J. Washington. I have to be honest, first of all, I do not know that much about P.J. Washington beside the fact that he's a big athletic forward who can shoot it, has a decent floor game, and I'm sure has the ability to be a pretty good defender. But because I don't know much about him, I don't want to waste a whole lot of time talking about it. But this wasn't the only move the Mavs made. The 2 moves that they made, acquiring Daniel Gafford from the Wizards and P.J. Washington, are a pretty solid attempt, in my opinion, at putting some help around Luka and Kyrie and solving some of their big issues. Both of them are big, strong, athletic front court players that'll give them a better presence on the inside. That is where obviously Daniel Gafford will help the most with that, but P.J. Washington, he can help in a number of other ways, whether it's catching and shooting. He seems to be pretty good at it, whether it's creating his own shot or guarding the other team's best wing or post. Overall, I'm glad the Mavs made a move and are trying to get Luka and Kyrie some help, and we'll see how things go with this trade. But my first thoughts are that it's a pretty good move. I don't think it hurts anything, but it does give them a chance to be a little better than they would have with Seth Curry and Grant Williams. So I don't mind this trade at all, and I think it's not a needle mover in the sense that I now say they are championship contenders, but it has the chance to help them out and raises their ceiling a little bit to playing with some of these other teams. And then, so those were the few big trades, I would call them, that were made throughout the deadline today. But there was a bunch of other smaller trades that I think could make a huge impact and that aren't really getting talked about as much. The first one that I noticed that I want to talk about was Pat Bev getting traded to the Bucks. First of all, this is gonna be pure comedy from the sense that, you know, him and Dame have that history where they were going at it in the bubble, and just they always kind of have had that history. So it'll be interesting to see how the relationship with Dame kind of pans itself out and what that looks like on the court, off the court, and how quickly they were able to fix things there. Obviously, we saw this with Beverly and Russ. They had their beefs in the past, but when they were on the Lakers, it wasn't like there was a chemistry issue between the two of them. Matter of fact, they said they actually became pretty good friends. So that'll be kind of the funniest thing to watch about this situation. But on the court, to me, this could really help their point of attack defense, which is every show you turn on that's talking about the Bucks. This is what everybody's talking about. It's their biggest weakness. It's where they're struggling the most. You got Dame and Malik Beasley out there trying to guard the guards in this league today that are unbelievably skilled. So hopefully he can help on that end. He don't really help them much offensively, but like I said in some other video where I was talking about the Bucks, offense don't seem to be their problem. So if they can just improve a little bit on the defensive end, that would kind of change my tune as to how I view them come playoff time. And then also I think he'll be which this could be a negative if you want to look at it that way, but he'll be the voice on the floor for Doc Rivers, whether it's holding Giannis accountable, holding Dame accountable. It'll be interesting to see whether they can handle that. Not everybody can handle somebody chirping at them, especially when you've got coach doing it and now you've got another player doing it. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans itself out, but he'll help their mentality of always having that dog mentality, as he calls it, and just kind of the same thing he did with Philly, as I felt, just kind of gave them confidence every night and helped them stay to that standard of playing championship basketball, or at least playing good basketball on a nightly basis. So I like that move. They didn't have to give up nothing. I don't really know why the Sixers gave him up, unless some people are saying that they may think they're going to buy out Kyle Lowry down in Charlotte and bring him there back to Philly, to his hometown. So maybe that's why they let go of him. We'll see. But like I said, pretty good move on the Bucks' part. Other one that happened yesterday, I don't think it happened today, was that the Celtics traded for Xavier Tillman. This is not that huge of a deal in my opinion. It's not gonna, I'm not gonna say, oh, the Celtics are have really upped their ceiling all of a sudden. It's just, it beefs them up a little bit. That they were still kind of small from that sense of strength. Obviously, you're got Porzingis, who's 7'3" and things like that, but to me, it just kind of allows them to rest Horford and rest Porzingis some, whether it's giving them a night off or even just not playing them a lot of minutes on any given night. It just kind of gives them the ability to not get, because when you get rid of those two, they get really small really quick, and he'll help them kind of, like I said, take some of the load off of those guys for the rest of the regular season. Another small one was Monte Morris got sent to the Timberwolves. To me, this just kind of helps add some depth to that off-guard position coming off the bench. He brings some shooting that we all know that they need, and it's shooting is something you can never have too much of. So I don't mind that move for the Timberwolves. I actually think I like it. So we'll see how that goes. Then the other one was to me, it's the most significant small move, as I'm calling it, was Royce O'Neal getting sent to the Suns. It adds to their much needed wing depth, that they needed some wings desperately. He's a perfect for the team and for their system, just because he's a great 3-and-D guy. I think he shoots 37% from three, which is above league average. And then the biggest thing and the first thing that came to my head is that KD at the 5 lineup just got even scarier. So if you think about that lineup, you got KD at the 5, you got Bradley Beal, Booker, Grayson Allen, and Royce O'Neal on the floor. And that lineup to me is terrifying. It's one of those lineups that can be kind of a chess piece for when they face bigger teams like the Nuggets, where you kind of play that game of we can't guard Jokic, we're too small, Nurkic can't guard him, so why not try this lineup? We know we can't stop anybody on the Nuggets, so let's force them to have to stop us. And it's just going to be one of those, if they get in that series, it's going to be one of those checkers, chess moves, where it's like, are you able to play this lineup, because you're cooking them on the offensive end, although you're getting cooked on the defensive end, and it just becomes a shootout, or are the Nuggets going to be too big for this lineup? But on paper, that lineup right there is pretty scary, and I can't wait to watch that and see if they can kind of gel together and give them a death lineup, as the phrase that people have liked to use. So that's really all the trades that I wanted to discuss, and that I think will really have an impact on any of the teams that made any moves this deadline. But there were also a bunch of teams that didn't make any moves, and obviously y'all know who those are: the Lakers, Warriors, and there's a few other teams that I could talk about. But starting with the Lakers, with their recent play, and I did not think that they needed to make a big move, and I'm happy they didn't. A lot of the talking heads and just kind of the discourse around it has been knocking them for not doing anything, but I don't mind them staying put at all, really. DeJounte Murray was not the answer for this team hopes of winning a championship. Let me be clear and say that again. DeJounte Murray, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, none of these people were the answer for this team's championship hopes. All of their hopes for winning a championship are in that building, and so that's where they got to start. As the king of pop once said, you got to start with the man in the mirror. So this is, if you think about it, this is pretty much the same team that made it to the conference finals last year. So I don't know why they're complaining. I'm not really agreeing with LeBron the way he's handling the situation and going about it. I haven't liked the way he's doing that. But first and foremost, this team has to hope for health. They need AD and Bron to stay healthy for the rest of the season and for hopefully a playoff run. Hopefully they make the playoffs. And then they need to hope to avoid the season-ending surgery for Vanderbilt. And they also have to hope that Gabe Vincent can come back and make a difference somewhere on this roster. But beyond that, they just have to start playing with that focus and that intensity that they did last year after the deadline, finishing the season as the best team in the league. And the same way that they did this year, just a few months ago in the in-season tournament. They were the best team in the league for those 7 games. So clearly they have it in them, and it's just a matter of pulling them out. It's time for them to flip that switch, and you just like they got what they got. There's no changing it now. You may can get somebody in the buyout market. I've seen Spencer Dinwiddie's name floating around, but even if you get him, you got what you got. It's time to put up or shut up, and they need to lock in and try and make a run at this thing. And just LeBron just needs to quit complaining. I know he's getting old and don't know how much longer he has left and don't want to waste a year, but there was no move that was going to increase your chances of winning a championship, in my opinion. So he should just play this year out, opt out of his contract, in my opinion, and then assess his options from there. The next team I wanted to talk about that didn't make any moves was the Warriors. I'm also glad that they stayed put and did not make a crazy move. Much like the Lakers, their biggest hope is they have to hope for help. They have been missing some key cogs in Chris Paul, GP2, and Moses Moody. Obviously, Moody just came back the other day, and CP3 and Gary Payton are starting to near a return. So they just need to get healthy and try to close out this regular season strong, try to get a play-in spot. I think they might be a little too far out of the 6th seed, but we'll see what happens there. And then the other thing they need is they just simply need better play from Clay and Wiggins. And I think they're going to get that now that this cloud is kind of moved on and not hovering over their head anymore. Wiggins has been playing a lot better as of late, and him and Kuminga are starting to – the biggest question for them going into the deadline in the last month or so was whether Wiggins and Kuminga were going to be able to play together, and they're starting to figure that out. That starting lineup with Steph, Clay, Wiggins, Kuminga, and Draymond is showing signs of being pretty dynamic and different from anything that they've really had in the past. Just simply because of the athleticism that Wiggins and JK provide. So I like what I'm seeing there. And then as far as Clay goes, it's coming. I promise you it is coming, and he will be ready when the time comes. He has just got to relax and just play basketball. It's that simple for him, just watching the games. He just has to play the game and let it come to you. He's pressing, he's shooting bad shots. And I played basketball, and I was harder on myself than anybody on my team, and coaches will admit that. My dad and my parents will admit that I was always way too hard on myself, so I know where he's coming from. But I also wasn't a future Hall of Famer and a 4-time champ and one of the best shooters, if not the second best shooter of all time. So he's just got to let go of whatever's eating at him and just play basketball, and I promise you the game will come to you and the game will reward you. But I personally think that the Warriors are going to come out of this deadline and start playing some pretty good basketball. And if not, there was not. I'm wrong. I'll be wrong. But there was not a trade that they could make that would improve their chances of doing anything this season. So I think they should just stay put, try to salvage this season, and then assess their options in the offseason, just like I said about LeBron. Then the last team I wanted to talk about was the Nuggets. I have to be honest, I'm a little shocked that they did not make some kind of little small move to add to that bench, because it's been their weak point all year. I understand that they don't have much to give up, but even someone like Royce O'Neal that went to the Suns, role players like that who it's not going to take much to get. I'm surprised they didn't try to get somebody like that just to kind of shore up their bench like that. But obviously I'm aware they have the best 5-man unit in the league in their starting lineup, but the lack of a bench unit really kind of worries me come playoff time. I know your rotation shrink down, but it's always nice to have an option of something that you can go to other than your starting lineup, and it's looking like they don't really have anything like that. Maybe Christian Braun kind of is developing, him and Peyton Watson, but outside of those two, they don't really have nothing, and then you don't know if you can trust those two when it comes playoff time. So we'll see about that. Like I said, I think that they made a little bit of a mistake there. I'm not saying that they can't win a championship or anything like that now, but to ensure that they really were the favorites and really had a great chance of repeating. I think they should have tried to make a move to make their bench a little better. But that's kind of all the trades and all the teams that I wanted to discuss after the deadline. Like I said earlier, I wasn't expecting there to be this much movement this year, so I was shocked by some of these moves. In my opinion, the biggest ones were the Knicks getting Bogdanovich and Burks, the Thunder getting Hayward, and then the 76ers getting Buddy Hield were the big three for me. However, do not sleep on some of the smaller moves like Royce O-Neal to the Suns and Pat Bev to the Bucks, and the Royce O-Neal one I really love. So don't sleep on that one at all. So this deadline it added even more storylines to the rest of the season and made me even more excited about it to see how things shake themselves out. But before I go, I have to ask that you scroll down and hit that like and subscribe button. And with that being said, that's going to do it for this episode. Thanks for tuning in to Hoopla. I've been your host, Ethan Jackson. Until next time.